go to learning objective 2 first, and that is appreciate how the building siting, details, and massing completed the overall master plan campus, concept for the campus. Well, the master plan had this building at being 188,000 square feet, and that's excluding the parking garage, and it ended up being a little bit smaller than that, 148,000 square feet. The site was, right in the beginning, was a pretty difficult thing for our civil engineer to handle because there were several different parcels on this that had to be conjoined into one parcel so that we could build the building. And we also had utility infrastructure easements that we had to watch out for. They're mostly on that side of the building, but there are some on the corner of Brambleton and Colley Avenue as well. And that gives you a little bit idea how tight it is on the site. We had 20-foot setbacks and 25 feet from buildings to buildings, like that one over there. We're just at the edge of that, and then this one over here we're not so close to. And then there's a fire department over on the other side, which we're also not close to. But we had to maintain all the setbacks along both Colley Avenue and Brambleton. And although this learning objective does address details and massing, there really weren't any details or massing indicated in the master plan, the campus master plan. So it didn't really apply. Obviously, we've departed from the materials that were on the that are on the other buildings, and mostly brick in this area. And we didn't have much in the way of brick at all. None, in fact. It's stone, but no brick.
Quick question. Was there any consideration to add Station 6 into the overall design?
Stations? Oh, no. What's going to happen is that eventually is going to go away, but the city would not let us touch it. If it does go away, they'll build something somewhere else, and EVMS might buy that part of the property.
Okay.
But we're really not close enough to it to really use it, because it would run all the way down to Fairfax Avenue here, so that the fire engines can get out that way, or they come in on that direction and come out on this side over here. And they've been pretty active over the last couple of years, I'll tell you that. All right, I'm going to jump to learning objective number 1, which is understand the fire code rating requirements for the building structural components. And the original concept was for the tower to be 13 stories tall. We couldn't get it with the standard code in the construction table, where they have listed the areas and the stories. For this particular building type, which is 1B, they listed 11 stories as being the max. And as you all probably know, you get a free story and some area if you put a sprinkler system in. So every building nowadays gets that free one. So we could go up to 12, but we elected not to. We met the program requirements by making the building bigger and really stretching out the boundaries, or getting close to the boundaries of the site. The master plan had a much smaller footprint, but it was identified as an administration building, which is what this primarily is. The tower's admin, this side of the podium over here is classrooms, and you'll see those. All right. The highest occupied floor is 113 feet 9 inches, and that kept us under the 120 feet, which is what would have kicked us up into another category, classification, I should say. And so we did not want to do that. The building, the top of the top of the penthouse is at 142 feet, which does exceed it, but that's not an occupiable floor. And the elevator inspector, who's a third-party guy, said, well, the penthouse is occupied, which means we violated code all over the place. And that would have enormous repercussions, because he did this like 2 weeks ago. So you can imagine. And so we have it on our drawings that it is not a high-rise, and it meets the requirements, and the city of Norfolk made us put that in there so that we would have it on the drawing. So we know the guy that's working for the city doesn't know what the city has required us to do right in the very beginning. So we wrote a letter, and again, I've tried calling him a couple times, and he did return my call today. Hopefully he agrees with us, but we'll see. We'll fight that battle when we come to it. All right, let's see. The fire rating of the structures, we get some reduction given the fact that it's sprinkled. And so we have this the structure and the bearing walls are all 1 hour rated. The stairs in this part of the building are 1 hour rated because there's 3 stories. But on that side, they're 11 stories, so they're 2 hour shafts there. But interestingly, the elevator only had to be, there's 4 elevators over there. They only had to be 1 hour rated shaft according to the code. So it's one of the anomalies that you don't often run into. The occupant types are business, assembly 3, and that's for classrooms, and S2. And then I'm jumping to learning objective number 3, understand the impacts of limited space in urban environments. So if you all saw those 2 pictures there indicating the site, you'll see that we're very, very tight. One thing that we did run into that you don't normally see is that we had to evaluate whether we were in an aircraft crash zone, because on the top of Sentara over there is a heliport. And you see that thing going up. It doesn't fly over this building, but it does fly around. And if you don't have, if you're in that zone, you have to put lights on top of your tower and all that stuff. But we weren't anywhere close to that. It was like 800 feet, I think is what the limit was. All right, then it says, evaluate the process of phased construction with regards to site and infrastructure planning. Well, the phased construction really did not impact the site or the infrastructure planning, except to the extent that this podium was designed to be finished first, because the students are using this portion. They're not using the tower. So they wanted to have this portion of the building open for the fall semester. So that's what was driving that, and Billy can tell you how much it was driven by. It was a heroic effort on S.B.BALLARD and the subcontractor forces. So anyway, but that was supposed to be finished in September, and I think it slipped a little bit due to the COVID pandemic. As you might expect, when it hit, we had about 200 people on site working, and about 2 weeks later, we had 100. So our workforce was cut in half, and you would have expected that to have a much more drastic effect on the schedule. But this podium was open to students only about 2 weeks after the original deadline was set. So that says a lot about the ability of S.B.BALLARD to get these things done. And then the tower really didn't have a deadline. I mean, it was phase 2, but the administrators are all in that building right there. They already have a place, so they weren't. It wasn't as critical for them to be in this building. So, any questions? Shall we go to the tower? I just want to introduce you to my counterpart. This is Carlton BITGOOD. Carlton BITGOOD, yeah, I remember your name, Carlton. Maybe for 2 years now. And Carlton is really, if you get him on your team, you can be blessed, because he's very oriented, detail oriented, and he knows everything about the job. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be water pressure coming out of the fire pump man. But if he stumbles on that one, he'll have that answer for you very quick. So anyway, he's been a pleasure to work with. There are plugins for power and data between every other seat. So it's all around the table. Wow. It was factory made.
Wow.
And,
Yeah.
Oh, that.
From a new Maybe following.
Well, and they haven't even polished it yet. That's what the owner of New Day was telling us yesterday. So
This building.
EYP was also responsible for the interior design.
Yeah.
And we were responsible for the FF&E. So this came out of, I don't know if you all know Karen Hermanzi. This is her table right here. But that casework and those finishes are EYP, including the carpet. Anyway, this entertainment center right here is like a transformer. Opens up, and then shelves. That. We open this up. It's got 3 drawers. We can open this up. You get a little extra distance on either side. Again, the offices are fairly much the same, just different configurations for different folks. One of the pictures that you see in here shows all of the cabling, the structural cabling that went on every single floor. And the conference rooms, you know where the credenza was? That's where the last column stops. Everything out to the windows is unsupported from below. So you can imagine the kind of stresses and strains that we had on that. It was pretty impressive to watch these post-tension cables being put in, because you can see they undulate, and the ones that undulate this way are in tension. The ones that undulate over at the columns are in compression, as you might expect for a standard span. But what they do, if you don't know post-tension construction, what they do is they pour the concrete after all these things are in place, and they let it set up a little bit, and then they pull it apart from one end, And you can see, you see these holes in the floor? That's where the post-tension cables came out. And they connect a hydraulic jack, which pulls those things at about 100,000 pounds per square inch, mind you. And they stretch, sorry to have to keep going back and forth, but they stretch these things 18 inches out of the wall. Steel. They pulled steel cable. It's about that big around. Pretty impressive stuff. And I know I worked on a job at Mary Washington College where the superintendent said one of those let go, and it flew about 100 yards in the air, which you don't want to be standing on one of those things when they release.
It would not stop.
It just
for
slipped.
you.
The cable just slipped. So anyway, let's walk around to. So this is the pre-function space for the 170-seat classroom back here. And this allows, obviously, students to sit out here and gather until the class starts. So, without further ado. There are two of them on the first and second floor are not tiered. The one on the third floor is tiered for more of a lecture type presentation. This one and the one on the second floor are more for collaboration type instruction. You can see there's monitors here and then two screens here, and then two screens over here which you cannot see. This particular room is set up for a skyfall type dividing partition, but it's not in. The steel's in, but the project has a lot of things to do. But eventually, it will be set up to divide the space into two halves. Any questions?
How many people for a classroom this big when it's open?
170 total.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So
So they basically stack on top of each other?
that is correct. Exactly. All right. This will be full of testing carols. You've seen them where there are two of them facing each other. The screen on a board, so you can't see, and side screens also, so you can't see somebody else taking a test. And there'll be, I think there's 122 in this room. Right now, it's a temporary staging area for furniture. But these will all be powered from the 4 boxes you see. The windows are acoustically rated. The walls are also acoustically rated. And that's Colley Avenue out that way. It doesn't get as much traffic as Brambleton does, but still, I have yet to hear of any cars or trucks going by. Students can put their stuff. Nothing is allowed in that testing center except your phone.
Yeah, they won't let you even have the cell phone.
Working on that now. It was originally designed for a stainless steel cover, but the fabricator had a hard time fabricating it, so we were going to have to come up with something different. And so
Wood caps?
What's that?
Wood caps?
That's on the index, yes. But it's a little tricky detailing, as you might.
I've done more than one set of those.
So that's awesome.
Sean wanted me to make sure that you all knew that this floor is not the entire composition floor. There's another sound raised layer under this, and then I think it's 16 inches of concrete. And Dr. Homan, who's the president of EVMS, was very concerned about noise transmission throughout the building from weight machines and that sort of thing. So you will notice that there are only a few free weights here. And those would be droppable, but he made a small concession to some of the other professors that wanted the free weights. Aerobics, obviously. Health classes, whatever you want. This will accommodate it. And the audio racks are over there. And
This was designed to provide the students a health and wellness center. It was not part of the original program. It came from discussions with the user groups and the students. It's an important amenity to the building.
all right, yeah, Sean points out a very interesting point, because he was involved in the programming. This space was not actually programmed to be in the building itself. But during the programming phase or discussions with the students, they really wanted a wellness center for their mental and physical health. And that's the reason this was created from scratch.
And this is for professors and students?
Faculty and staff, yes. Yeah, and there's a huge mechanical room right above us here. It has a couple of air handler units that are maybe 10 feet tall, 20 feet long. And when we first fired them up, they were making a terrible racket. You could hear it outside of the room. And what happened was the way it was programmed, they were running at 100% instead of running to meet the load. And so they were just using an enormous amount of energy for one, and it was making life difficult for anybody outside the room. So we did some tweaks for it, and I took some of there were duct silencers, which often, they're a fairly common feature of big units like that, where the air going out is run through essentially a muffler. And they were causing the airflow to back up. And so that's why they were running at such a high speed, because they weren't getting enough out to cool the spaces. And so we took those out, and that solved the problem. And we put some gasketing on one door that goes into the parking garage on that side. And that seems to have solved the problem. Anyway, that's just an example of the kind of things you run into during construction, where you gotta think on the fly and work fixes. And I'm not claiming any credit for those fixes, because I'm not a mechanical engineer, but we had a good mechanical team on this job. That's it for the Wellness Center.
Standpipes and all?
Standpipes, yes.
Is it a ventilated garage?
What's that?
Is it a ventilated garage?
It is. Well, it's not power ventilated.
Power ventilated?
But when you were on this side of the building, and when you first approached the building, you could see the parking.
Oh, see over there.
With their
some stuff.
louvers.
Yeah.
And we calculated, or EYP calculated the amount of free area per floor, and that's how we met whatever, I forget the percentage of free areas required in a parking garage, but we met that. So this is an example of subcontractor not quite getting it right. That rail is not in the right place. It's not fabricated right. So it's got to be moved up onto this platform here.
It's gotta be high.
Yeah, exactly. It's not guardrail height. But what we're going to do is, and this solves another problem we had, is this handrail was supposed to be bolted through the compressible insulation, acoustical panels. Well, that's problematic. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this rail over there, and then the contractor will build another rail to be over here, so we can still maintain our width egress requirements. So, and we did that, so it's not a total loss for the contractor. You can reuse that piece. All right, we have one rail that is not yet in place, and it's an entirely different type of rail. And that is, so people don't fall down this gap between the curtain wall and the knee wall. There will be another guardrail on this one. Now, we started out with painted steel, and our vertical posts would be at every single one of these curtain walls, so it wouldn't be as obvious. It'll be a cable rail, so the horizontal cables will be stainless steel. So, any questions?
The platform was built on cold form framing?
Yes, and plywood.